Well, you guys are good listeners. And I'm going to tell you why that's important to me, because as we pull candidates in, I have had recruiting firms before that it was literally just a dump truck dump. And it was everybody who had a pulse. You guys took the time on the front end to find out exactly what we were looking for, to filter for us on the front end so that only the cream that rose to the top made it to me.
All right, guys, Sandy Cerami coming at you live with my right-hand guy. On my right-hand side, Mr. Ron Marvo. In the center of the screen, we have a very special guest today on the Automotive Intel Report, coming to you live here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. It is my man, Mr. Ed Roberts. He is the Chief Operations Officer at Bozard Ford Ford Lincoln. I always throw that Mercury. Right? That's the old guy in me, Ed. That's the old guy in me. Still throwing the Mercury in there. I am a nostalgist, as they say.
Yes.
But he is coming to us live from the bar down in St. Augustine. I love the backdrop because it gives me a nice setup for business, bourbon, and cigars. But Ed, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks, Ed. Glad to be here, guys.
And before we kick it off, we got to pay the bills. So, Mr. Ron Marvo, if you could kick it off for us.
Let's go, everybody. This episode is sponsored by SDA 365 Recruiting by Sandy Cerami and Associates. As many of you know, most dealers and GMs become frustrated trying to find top talent to hire and help continue growing their business. Most of us are sick and tired of being sick and tired hearing about the Great Resignation or the mass migration to working from home. Our SCA 365 recruiting systems features our proprietary recruiting process designed to attract top talent and the minute they're in the market for a career change or a new opportunity. Our clients will say it far better than we can, so go to sandycerami.com and get started quickly and easily right now. You can also download your free PDF of the 7 deadly recruiting sins you need to know now for 2022. So go there now and hear for yourself why our system pulls the best talent in the market consistently. This episode is also sponsored by none other than the folks at Priority Payments Local. Whether it's supply chain disruption, the rising cost of everyday business, or an OEM program requiring yet another dealer investment, dealer profitability is always under siege. The net zero technology from Priority Payments helps dealerships reduce and even eliminate processing fees once and for all, saving dealers 5, 6, or even 7 figures every single year. Dealers can then reinvest or deploy their recovered capital in any way they choose, giving them total control of their hard-earned profits. Visit sandycerami.com/priority and get your free analysis that could save you thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in bloated expenses from processing fees on credit and debit card transactions.
Amen, my brother. Well done, well read, well represented, as they say. Let's get to it, man. Ed, first of all, I'm looking forward to seeing you in September. We've got Business Bourbon and Cigars #4 coming up September 13th through the 15th in Louisville, Kentucky. Anybody that wants can get more info at businessbourboncigarsfordealers.com. Couple of seats remaining for dealers, GMs, fixed operations directors, e-commerce or BDC managers as well. So we'd love to see you there, but I'm looking forward to seeing you. Is Natasha going to join you again?
Absolutely. She's going to be there with me. We're going to stick around for a couple of days afterwards as well. For the
that's awesome. So you're going to catch the event that weekend after?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great one. I wish I could dovetail that. Mary and I are actually going to have to head back to the East Coast to go visit my daughter for Parents Weekend. It's her first year at college, as we were talking about backstage. And so we've got to head back that Friday and go right to Pennsylvania. But let's talk Turkey. Let's talk a little bit about culture, because I had the opportunity, along with my man, Mr. David Boyle, the CEO at Traction, to visit your store a couple of months back. And I was so blown away by the culture and by the environment and just the vibe that I got walking onto the campus there in St. Augustine. Talk a little bit about why culture is so critically important in your operation and how you guys have been able to develop such an incredible feel for that dealership.
We're a culture-driven store, as you noticed when you was there, and ultimately it boils down to intentionality. And when you share your vision rather than top of the house talk about where we want to be and not necessarily push that down. When you share your vision, everybody's pushing in that direction, and then everybody's pushing in the same direction. When you come in, it's how can we carry you in that direction so that we're all going in the same direction together. So it all ties together, but it takes intentionality and purpose to get it there.
Yeah, I was incredibly impressed by the buy-in. I had a chance to spend some time with a couple of the service advisors that were there on the late shift. There, even at the end of the day, and we were there at like 7 o'clock at night. Their level of engagement, their level of enthusiasm, even at that point in the day, was palpable to me. And then we had the chance to walk the shop, and I saw, some of the, I think, earmarks of your culture within the shop. I love all of the signs, and I don't want to call them motivational signs. I do want to call them inspirational signs, because I think most of what I saw, especially above the technician bays, were signs that they are able to pick for themselves. They can change anytime they want to. Talk a little bit about that and why that's so important.
Well, it gives them buy-in. It gives them some ownership in the shop. So we have boards above each of the technicians' bays, and each one of those boards has a vinyl sign on it that has some type of motivational, inspirational, or a positive quote on it that really means something to them. It can mean so certain quotes mean certain things to certain people, but there's certain ones that really tugs on those heartstrings. Mm-hmm. And they're able to come to us and say, hey, this is the one I want hanging by me. And next thing you know, they're taking some ownership, and they're showing it off to people when people come visit them and whatever else. And it just keeps compounding itself.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I know that didn't happen overnight. So talk a little bit about the origin of the culture. Where does it really emanate from? Who pointed the dealership and the organization in that direction in the first place?
That goes back to the early 90s, I would say, when I got tied into the original owner that I worked for. He ultimately ended up being the bridge owner in this store about 15 years ago, because we're third generation, and second generation's health was declining at a rapid rate while this third generation was still in high school. So he became the bridge owner, and that's how I got tied in here, and became the bridge owner. And we just reinstilled what we did in the 90s at one of his stores, and just took what we've learned since then and amplified it.
Yeah, I noticed. As I said, it's palpable. Talk a little bit about the members of your team. I noticed the way that you have your service advisor write-up areas set up. They're working in close proximity to each other on a regular basis. Talk a little bit about things that you guys do on a day in and day out basis to continue to drive that level of camaraderie and teamwork every day.
Everything we do is tied with teams, and we do it with the sales teams. We do it with service advisors. We do it with technicians. Some technicians is two-man teams. Some of them are more. But everything's tied together with teams. Advisors are up to 4 advisors per team. And so everything they do is dumped into a bucket. They all get paid out of that bucket. So all it's group performance, but then it becomes a competitive atmosphere to where it's not one competing against another guy. It's a 4-man team competing against another 4-man team. So we're elevating 8 people. But you got people covering for each other because they all wear the hat of everything. If there's an issue with CSI or whatever else, it's not Alex's issue. It's the team's issue. They all cover for each other, and it allows for that work-life balance. So when one takes off, you don't have to worry about the 12 jobs they have floating.
Right.
It's the team's deal.
And talk a little bit about that. Are they true teams, or are they lateral support structures in the shop?
We're lateral support in the shop, but we do have inside of lateral support, we have 2-man teams.
Okay.
And some a little bit larger than that. One is a 5-man team where they split everything, but most of them are just 2-man teams. It's different in quick service. Quick service is 2-man teams, but that's with different purpose.
Correct.
But really in the main shop, it's pairing the right personalities together. It's not pairing the same personality, it's pairing the opposing personality. And then now we have somebody that we got twice the brain power diagnosed in the vehicle. There's a lot of efficiencies that ties together with that. When there has to be communication with something, or we're waiting on approval on something else, they can jump on one together, and both of them can work on.
Right.
It improves performance, and then they self-motivate each other rather than one hanging out at the break room and talking about last night's whatever game. The other one's kicking in, hey, come on, we got work to do.
Yeah.
So they self-manage each other when you do that. But it takes pairing the right two together. You can't just pair two guys in the shop and say, hey, these guys should work together. Well, they produce about the same number of out. No, it's opposing personalities where they can really feed on each other.
Ed, at the last BB&C, I loved everything that you had said, and you had the topic of the service end of things at BB&C. But you had made a mention about people coming into the dealership sometimes to just survive the day, and that doesn't happen at your dealer. You help them thrive, not survive the day. But you also talked about individual goals. We're talking about teams too, but how do you help them, your teams, and your individuals really set goals, and show them that there's a growth path, within the service department?
Well, I'm going to back that up a little bit because leadership is really a lot like parenting. And as parents, we want our kids to be part of team sports. And the reason why we want them to be part of team sports is so they can lean on each other and learn the value of somebody else. Well, it's the same thing in the work life deal where if we got these guys always competing against each other, then their battle is the guy next to him, not the customer in front of them.
Got it.
And we want to shift that to where everybody's focus is the person in front of them because we want to take care of each other. Yeah. And the purpose is to take care of that. And so we set goals, and we don't set a monthly goal. Yes, do we have monthly goals, weekly goals, but we narrow it down to what can we get done today. And then you could check that box every day. Did you make that happen? And if you didn't make it happen today, what do you got to do tomorrow to catch up that? When you break it down to those levels, you far exceed those goals. Like this morning, I'm working from home today, but this morning as I'm looking over everything, we've broken every single record that we got on the 29th. So I still have today to exceed that. And June isn't typically the biggest month in the car business, but it's now our biggest month in our history. So that'll continue to compound, and we'll do it again next month because we only want records to last 30 days or 31 days, whatever that be. But when you take that and you break it down into something that they can look at daily basis rather than weekly, or because when you miss it 3 days in a row, when you're chasing that weekly deal, you kind of give up on the week.
Yeah.
When you chase it per day, if you have a bad day get away from you, you always got tomorrow.
You start over. Yep. Fresh start. I love that. And the daily number.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point that you make, Ed. I'm going to go back to something you said before, where you have the teams that have different structures. Sometimes they're 2-man teams, sometimes they're 4-man teams or 5-man teams. How much input do the technicians have in terms of which team they end up on?
Well, there's some intentionality there because sometimes you let them have more input than you think you should, simply because when you look for somebody to pair up with in that environment, you look for yourself, and you don't necessarily match up the best with that. So they'll look at themselves and say, hey, you do this, we should become a team. We can kill it. We can own this. And those don't typically take off very well, but you have to let one or two of those kind of mold together and then let it fall apart to show the rest that there's a reason why, there's a method to the madness.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And you mentioned you blend both lateral support and true teams within the same shop. How much input do they have on that as well? Because I know, listen, we've been through in our organization the implementation of lateral support teams over the course of the years, and especially if you're going from a individual driven production system to a lateral support or a true team system, there's a lot of apprehension. There's a lot of skepticism. It takes a whole lot of faith on the part of the technicians for sure. How are you able to actually execute on that, and how much input and involvement do they have in terms of making that decision?
They have a ton of input. Now, obviously, we want to create the mainframe first. Let's just narrow it down to the teams. When we've selected team leaders, we're looking at teams. We'll select and figure out which ones kind of fit best and mark that. And then we'll bring the team leaders in and say, hey, let's pick our teams. And as we talk about different strengths and whatever else, next thing you know, they have chosen exactly what you felt like was laid out. And every now and then there's an adjustment because they brought up something that you weren't thinking about or whatever else. And there needs to be that adjustment. But now they have buy-in. Now, because we went through that method, and that's the method that skipped most. Since we went through that method, it's now they own the team. They got buy-in in it because they was involved with choosing their team. When you just give them the team, then they're going to show you, here's the reason why it ain't going to work.
Yep.
And so you got to get the buy-in.
Yeah, go to poke holes in it.
I love it because it's really a very collaborative versus a dictatorial environment, and I think it's obviously it's evidenced by the product that you guys put on the field every single day. As I said, the level of enthusiasm and engagement was incredible. Talk a little bit about on the sales end of the business as well, where you see that impact the culture and the environment in the dealership. Give us a couple of examples on the front end of the business, how it's been effective for you culturally.
Well, let's talk about the what goal setting does on the front end of the business, especially in today's times.
Mm-hmm.
Because today, let's look at the last couple of years of these guys coming into the field to become salespeople. They really don't have to sell cars. Do you have it? Is it available? I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's the extent of it. Well, we still have to sell used cars because we can kind of control that still a bit. We can't control new inventory. We can do everything we can to drive it, but we can't necessarily control it. But we can control used cars. And so that becomes our opportunity to really drive that. And to break those goals down, we don't talk about how many cars did you get out for this month. We talk about how many new cars did you sell? How many used cars did you sell? How many appointments did you you got set for today? Daily appointments. How many orders did you place? Because those are the things that drives the business. And it's broken down on a daily deal to where how many appointments do you got set for tomorrow? And then now you still have an opportunity to train, because if you got a guy selling 15 new cars a month and 2 used cars, he's probably not a very strong salesperson, and he's grooming more people than you realize.
100%.
And you could take that opportunity and train that person on becoming a true salesperson. And then you lessen the chance of losing that person as inventory becomes available and they can't no longer make a living. And minimizing turnover is what allows us to continue to compound the culture that we have, because you're really starting at a lower level and rebuilding each time you have turnover. So preparing our people, identifying where their opportunities are, training them to get them past that allows us to give them a career path and minimize turnover and continue to compound culture.
I love it. Talk a little bit about the process in terms of finding the right people for your dealership and the culture. Who are you looking for specifically in terms of personality traits and characteristics?
A lot of people are afraid of the Great Resignation, but I'm a big fan of it, because reality is people didn't leave their job thinking, I will never have to work again. They left their job because they didn't see a future in it.
Right.
Sure. And when we can offer them a career path that's much different. So it really put people out there in the field that gave us a larger pool to pull from, of people that want to do something different. And so I don't look at it as, why'd you leave your job? Why did you do this? If you look at the places that are struggling for employment and with employees, we're looking with places that not necessarily offer much of a career path. Waiters, waitresses.
Sure.
Yeah, 1 in 100 may become the kitchen manager 10 years from now.
Yep.
But what about the other 99?
Correct.
So they're leaving jobs. You don't walk into a bank and they not have anybody there to help you, because they have a path. And it's the same for us. We need to offer that path, but you got to narrow it down to the right people to do that. They got to fit our culture. So we hire on 3 C's. One of those is chemistry. They got to be able to fit and got to be able to be the contributing element to the culture that we build. Character is a judgment call when we're interviewing and talking with them. But ultimately, if you ask the right questions, you can figure out who they are. But it's still at the end of the day a judgment call. And sometimes they'll fool you. And then competency. And competency is kind of misleading a little bit, because in most cases, the way we're structured, you don't necessarily have to know how to do the job. But what I'm looking for in competency is, are you teachable? If you're teachable, then you can fit our deal.
100%. I love that comment, because Ron and I talk about this all the time. We hear, so many employers out there hiring for a skill set and missing the whole mindset piece. We love people that are coachable, teachable, that are hungry, that have the right character. Sometimes we find out about their character by the questions that they ask. Something that we teach all the time is how to ask the right questions and how to avoid the wrong ones, because it says everything about you ultimately, and getting people to frame their perspective and expectations effectively for the interview process. So I love what you're saying there.
And Sandy, just real quick to that point, And in what ways do you guys, and obviously Sandy and I know this, but in what ways do you guys, when you're doing interviews, how do you set a great first impression for the store? Because so many times they're interviewing us as well, right? It has to be culturally a good fit for them too. What are some ways you guys make a great first impression in initial meetings?
Well, today is much different than it was a few years back. Today, we showcase the store. We give them a tour of the dealership and let them feel the culture for themselves. And that happens before we sit down and have a conversation.
Love it.
Because they need to envision themselves fitting in. And yes, it needs to be a two-sided interview because we may want them, but if they don't want to work for us, if we're the wrong brand or whatever else, then we're wasting each other's time.
Sure.
That's a great point. I tell you, we, as a function of what we do, we talk to a lot of dealers, we talk to a lot of prospective employees and candidates. And the one thing I can tell you is that the one big blind spot that I see in retail automotive right now is the lack of understanding that, or at least recognition of the fact that you're not competing with other dealers as much as we have been in the past. We're competing with everybody out there in the marketplace today. And so when we position ourselves as just another car dealership, I think we miss an opportunity to talk about the fact that we become a technology hub for the entire globe, right? I mean, everything that we do is powered by data technology and people that have the right mindset. And so when we don't feature that as one of the benefits of getting involved in retail automotive, I think we missed the opportunity. We're competing with every other business that's out there, including high tech.
Exactly. I don't want to talk somebody into coming to work for me. I want them to want to come to work there.
Yeah.
And when they do that, we've won the battle.
100%. And making sure that we're letting them know what they can expect when they get there, that it's not just the same old, same old. That I think is, as I said, an opportunity that's often missed in the business. People, and Ed, you and I have talked about this a ton. People are what makes the difference. We can have the greatest processes in the world. We can have an incredible product, but for sustainable success, because everything ebbs and flows, technology, products, marketing, leadership, everything ebbs and flows. When you've got a high quality collection of talent and collection of character in your organization, you're able to withstand. I think that's the great hedge against any ebb and flow in any business, is having great people that believe in each other, that have that recognition for the value that each one of them brings to the table each day. And that's one of the things that I recognized in your organization right away. And that, by the way, that starts from the top office on the second floor all the way down. I got that feel. It wasn't just what I found in the shop or in the service drive or the showroom. It's what I found when I went back into the bowels and the upper levels of the organization as well.
Well, let's take that a little deeper. Our stores are intimidating. And then once we've agreed that you're going to join our team, they're still questioning themselves. Did I make the right decision?
Absolutely.
And we got to be prepared for them. And then when they show up, and in normal situations, we put them in a room. Let's fill out your payroll packet. Let's get all your paperwork done. And then they sit there for the next 30 minutes before you come back to them. And then you get them connected with somebody and you hang out with this guy today, and he'll teach you everything you need to know. But reality is we need to be prepared. We need to have their name tags. We need to be committed to them. We need to have the business cards ready for them. Need to have their DMS logins, their logins into the manufacturer. Need to have them sit down and do their manufacturer training right from the beginning. And then at lunch, rather than somebody calling them and saying, hey, how's your first day going? I don't know. I've just been standing by this guy all day. I don't know what's really going on.
Well,
they can
we're all laughing because we know it's true. I mean, there's truth in that as well.
They've already Snapchatted them a picture of the business card.
And that speaks directly to a quote that you said at Business Bourbon Cigars, which was, the best conquest is retention. And it's not just client retention, it's employee retention.
Employee retention.
Yeah, absolutely. Our employee retention
our boy Gene Girdley out on the left coast puts in Culture Kings right here. Back at you, Gene Girdley, who gets this at a very, very high level. He understands this better than most. He's a great guy, and he gets it. I love the fact that Ron took copious notes of Business Bourbon and Cigars, as he always does. He's a proponent and a disciple of hashtag WTSD, which means write that shit down. If it's worth remembering, it's worth writing down. And that quote is that's a billion-dollar quote, in my opinion, because we get so focused on client retention that we miss that the single biggest catalyst and amplifier of client retention is employee retention or associate retention for certain. And I know that you take that seriously. Ed, talk a little bit about you. You're a guy who doesn't. You're not the first one to grab the microphone. We usually have to kind of shove it in front of you and say, hey, come on, Ed, you've got a lot to share, because you're a very humble guy and a humble leader, but somebody that gets the job done. How have you been able to kind of come out of that shell of humility that you have in order to establish yourself as such a great leader in your organization? What are the things that really motivated and inspired you to really step up your game?
Well, I will tell you, I don't necessarily live in the shell, but I've never learned anything from talking. So I always want to listen. The more I listen, the more I learn. So if I can sit back and just absorb the room, that's what I'm going to do. But ultimately, at the end of it, I will make an impact from it. But what drove me to the level of where I'm at now was, one, being connected to the right people. But two, growing up in the environment that I grew up in. I grew up in a very humble environment, and it was humble beginnings, and just needed to find a way to do something different. And then the refusal to go back to ever doing that. And then someone once gave me the opportunity. So now it's my turn to give others opportunity.
I asked you that question for a reason, because I love the story. I've heard it at length twice now, right from you, and it inspires the hell out of me. It's what I love most about you, other than the fact that I think you just have one of those winning personalities that people just want to be around. Your story, where you came from, where people really didn't have high expectations for you, yet you knew what you had inside of you and what you had to do. And our buddy Mike DeRazio, who we had as a guest as well, over at Platinum Mitsubishi in Pennsylvania, calls it FITFO, figure it the F out. And I think you do a very, very effective job of FITFO, figuring things out along the way. And I think that's the example that you set for your team. I would suspect that leading by example and having people take accountability and ownership, as you said before, is another thing that drives the success of the Bozard organization.
Absolutely. I was just out of the office for 2 weeks, one at a business conference, and then two on vacation after that. And everybody says, I'll give you a couple of days to get caught up. I had nothing to get caught up when I got back. I mean, things flowed like they needed to. Things took place. We're having a record month. It's the team that you build, and you empower them to do the right thing there, and they'll surprise you in what they're capable of. Yeah,
no question. And I think that I've heard that very often throughout my career, that great leadership affords themselves the opportunity to step away for extended periods of time, because they've got great leadership right behind them that they've been able to cultivate and groom. And that's a sign of great leadership, is building that incredible bench of players that can step up. And you see it on sports teams all the time, right? Where you've got a great team and one of the star players goes down, and then it's next man up or next person, next woman up, and somebody has to step into that role. And if you've got great process and great chemistry, and you've got a deep bench of leaders that you've been cultivating that are just ready to take that next step, you see exactly what you're talking about right now.
They're ready to show you that they can handle it and make it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Adam Aarons, our buddy, another Business Bourbon and Cigars alum, a founding member as well, Ed. He was there with us the very first one back in October of 2020. Yep. I had a conversation with him, and you know, he said to me, Sandy, look, it's not about money. He goes, I have all the money I'll ever need in my lifetime. He says it's not about just buying stores for the sake of buying stores. That's not where I'm at in my life. He says, I'm at a point in my life and in my career where I'm only going to buy another store if I can create opportunity for somebody in my organization that has earned it and deserves it. And I love that. You know, it's such an incredible way to think about your business and think about the impact that you can have on other lives. And I think that speaks to exactly what you're talking about, providing people with an opportunity to step up.
Yeah, that's well said. And when you do that, they will show you that they're capable of more than what you even thought they was capable of.
Amen.
Maybe they're surprising themselves, but it speaks volumes.
Well, buddy, I think you're a champion of great culture, killer culture, as we call it. And I learned so much from you every single time I have a chance to share time, whether it's digitally or on screen like this or live and in person. at Business Bourbon and Cigars or during a visit, I have a chance to learn from you. I want to pivot because we're hitting the halfway mark over here, coming up on the bottom half of the hour. I want to pivot to electric vehicles. It's a very, very hot topic right now. There are a lot of different opinions in terms of what the EV segment, I'm going to call it the segment because that's what I believe it is. I think it's a segment that's, being exploited for all the wrong reasons right now. That's one man's opinion. But I'm just curious, what are your thoughts in terms of where we're going with EVs and what kind of real opportunity does it represent? And where are the myths in your mind?
I love that there's a shift in our business because unfortunately the car business has been stuck in time forever. And we're resistant to change, have been resistant to change since the inception of car dealerships. And we think that we figured it out. So we don't want anybody coming in and messing with it and changing it up. And ultimately, that's what created the service aftermarket that we all try to prevent stuff from going to.
Right.
And
yes,
now
you are not wrong.
Now it's created the Carvanas and the Vrooms and all those other things. But reality is, let's look at it from a consumer perception. The consumer perception is, man, gas is $5, $6, $7 a gallon. They are bringing out an electric vehicle. I am all about it. They're excited. And then they show up to us and we say, oh, you don't want an electric vehicle. You can't get a charge. You can't get this. And we tell them all the problems that they don't want to hear. We have to shift to where we continue with that excitement, because when they show up to us with that excitement, it's our opportunity to win them over forever. And if we want to talk to them about range anxiety and whatever else, we need to provide those solutions for that. We need to create F&I products that creates an infrastructure for them at home, because nobody at home has a charger. Mm-hmm. When they buy the vehicle, they got one they can plug in the wall, but they're not going to get much range with that. So right. We need to put a charger in at home that gets something done. We need to be able to educate them on how they can go on a trip and how they can do that, how they can even if they come in with the obstacles of what about range? What about this? We need to have the answers to that, not agree with them.
Yeah.
So we got to shift to supporting EV. I love that the opportunity is there. But it's going to force dealers to change. And for us, I want to be a destination. I'm lucky enough to have a restaurant in my dealership. Yeah. So I can be on the grid. I can have superchargers there where people come eat lunch, get a supercharge. But also, when they pull on my property, they're an opportunity for us, whether it's just looking at product that I have there or whatever else. So I'm looking forward to what EV brings to the table.
I am too. I think my issue is that it's being oversold at so many different levels. I also think that it represents tremendous opportunity for dealers. I don't want to unsell somebody if they're coming in excited about an electric vehicle. Okay, they've probably done their homework. Most of these EV buyers, from what I've heard feedback wise, is they've done a lot of homework. Okay, they've taken a look at the competitors in the marketplace. They've taken a look at the pros and cons of EVs. Where I see a lot of the myths being thrown around are out of Washington, D.C. for sure. I don't think that those folks care to get into the nitty gritty of the facts with respect to EVs and where they fit in the market in and of itself, right? You talk about Tesla being, I'll call it the poster child for EVs, right? It's kind of hard to deny that Tesla has really blazed the path for everybody else. It's caused a little bit of angst. I know that Jim Farley has made some very controversial comments recently. I would take him to task on quite a few. I think he's a smart guy. I think he knows what he's doing. I think some of it is almost tongue in cheek. I think some of it is a little bit of a weather balloon, if you will, that he's putting up there. But I think that there's an opportunity ultimately for us to really take a look at EVs and figure out where they're going to fit in the market segment. Because the truth of the matter is, from a scale perspective, there's a lot that has to get done infrastructure wise, right? And we've had some really fruitful conversations about that. How do you see the infrastructure puzzle being put together over the course of the next, let's call it, it's got to be next 10 to 15 years, because it's not going to happen overnight?
Well, for the longest time, vehicles have not been built around consumers. Vehicles have been built around regulations. And
yes, well put.
And same thing's going to happen here, but the regulations is going to be for infrastructure.
Sure.
Because it's their push, they'll make it happen. So I'm not overly concerned with that. There's more infrastructure out there than we realize.
Yes.
Because if we drive around now and we look, we see electric chargers, but the utilization of those electric chargers isn't very high. So there's more infrastructure there already than we give credit for the vehicles that's out there. But that'll continue to compound itself over time. And quite frankly, the people in DC, I don't think they overly know how to regulate an EV yet. They're just latching onto it. Safety regulations maybe, but the rest of the vehicle they don't have a whole lot with. So they're going to latch on to infrastructure. So I have no fear of the infrastructure coming around it. And I believe it is going to drive the cost down to build a vehicle. And just think about all the players that's coming into the field right now. You got Lucid and Rivian and all the new players coming in. Hey, if you got $1 billion, let's go create a car company.
And, you ain't kidding. Well, if you got $1 billion to lose, maybe. Really, to be honest with you. Our buddy SJ has chimed in over here. He said it was like watching a rose between two thorns. I suspect he's referring to Ed as the rose. Thank you, SJ. And then he says the real money will be made in creating an infrastructure that makes it quicker, easier, and more enjoyable / convenient to recharge. And he's not wrong. One of the complaints that I do hear out there in the marketplace, because I've done a bit of research on this, is that the initial surge of infrastructure needs to be maintained more effectively, right? And it needs to be upgraded more rapidly. And so I think Scott is right. There's an opportunity there ultimately for not only the installation, but also I think the maintenance piece of it as well, because these things are going to be used over and over and over again. And as you know, when we let the general public put their hands on anything, we have that term lot damage. Just imagine what happens, with respect to a charge.
Sandy, to that point and to what Ed said before, Ed, when we do have level 3 DC fast charging and you could charge your battery up to 80% in 30 minutes, I love the idea that with you at the restaurant, you actually have an experience when you're going to your dealership, right? They have time they're spending, not just in your dealership, but around your people. And at the moment, that's what we're looking at as our fast charging is 30 minutes. But I was one of the first people to sell an e-tron for Audi in the Northeast region. And one of the first people I sold it to, he absolutely loved it. It fit his lifestyle. The second person I sold an e-tron to drove over 100 miles daily, highway miles, and struggled to find infrastructure to charge the vehicle, or they just weren't working. And he wanted to return the vehicle because he just wasn't happy with it. So I always made sure, as I'm sure you do, is does it fit your lifestyle, right? And at the moment, with the way infrastructure is, it has to be fitting your lifestyle. So it's an interesting theory, but I love or what's going on rather, but I love what you're doing with the experience aspect of it. I think that when DC fast charging becomes a thing, dealerships like yours are going to be the ones to thrive.
Well, and we have there's not necessarily been a plan for infrastructure. It's been a reaction. And without a plan, we're just doing all kinds of different things. We're putting superchargers at gas stations. Well, who wants to hang out at a gas station for 30 minutes, period?
You just took my question, Ed. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. If we put superchargers in places that we go to frequently, whether it's to grab lunch, whether it's whatever, a supermarket or grocery store, things that we do, put them in places that is our destinations just to live life. Now you've made it convenient. But you go to these Tesla superchargers and they're sitting in some parking lot that may not have anything on it, and people are sitting in their car reading a book. Well, I prefer to be driving down the road listening to a book because now I'm making better use of my time than just sitting there.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to sit in the car for 30 minutes and do nothing. So I think we got to create the plan for the infrastructure and then go put it in place.
Scott Joseph again, he says, will level 3 charging perform as well as 5G was supposed to? It's not a bit. I'll tell you what, he's not wrong.
No.
But, once again, Ed, you talked about it before with respect to, how regulations impact the market and the people that are putting these regulations in place not being nearly as educated as they need to be. I think, a lot of times, a lot of what happens with respect to regulatory measures speaks to very subjective needs on the part of these folks in DC. They have been a disappointment across the board in a lot of ways. And so my hope is that they'll allow the market to speak here.
Sure.
If you talk to any politician in DC, they want to see 100% EVs by 2035 and 2050. And a couple of things about that. First of all, I don't know that the market is going to absorb 100% EVs unless the manufacturers do decide to go that way. But that would speak to your point before about, are we listening to the market, or are we going to make vehicles based on regulations and what we want to make at the manufacturer level? They made that mistake, by the way, the big three, all the way through the 70s and into the 80s. And it landed them in a heap of hot water, as you know.
Yeah, I want to be politically correct here.
Let it fly, baby. We got no restrictions on this show.
You say what you want, man.
EVs are not going to be 100% in our lifetime. Whether it's split households or subscription ownership or whatever it may be, when we want to take a trip, or maybe it's rental days. You buy an EV and you can buy 30 rental days a year. So when you take a trip, there's an ICE vehicle available. But the infrastructure for ICE is there, and you're not just going to turn that off in 10 years.
Right.
I mean, look at all of the refinement, all the other stuff, all the fuel stations, all the transporting of that stuff that takes place. You're not just going to shut that infrastructure down in 10, 15, 20 years.
Correct.
So that is going to be there for us. So for us, for even in my kid's lifetime, I don't believe that we'll be at 100% EV, but I believe we'll crest. I believe that we'll crest that 50% mark probably in our lifetime.
Sure.
I think you're probably right. I would not argue that point. As Scott says, maybe in his lifetime, but not mine. And by the way, I think he's taking breaks in between the rocking chair and the stroller right now. He's got to bounce back and forth between the two. But to your point, there are geopolitical ramifications and geopolitical factors that have to be considered here when we start to talk about, just 50% of the car park in the United States would be 140 million plus vehicles. Okay. There are billions of vehicles on the road globally, right? So we're talking about just an incredible transformation in terms of how much of the market will go the EV route. And I agree with you. I think it's going to be over a very extended period of time.
Well, there's so many other changes that's going to have to come with that, because right now EV is so a small percentage of the market. It doesn't necessarily affect it so much. But all of our road infrastructure tax comes from fuel.
Yep.
So we still have to build new roads. We still have to maintain the roads that's out there. So that tax is going to have to come somewhere else. There's so many elements that's going to tie into that nobody's thinking of yet, or not enough people's thinking of yet, for us to be 100% EV. So being 100% EV is a long ways down the road.
You're 100% accurate, my man. And so when we talk about those numbers, you talk about the federal tax is in the teens in terms of cents. Okay. But the state taxes can run as high as 35 cents per gallon in any given state. Okay. And so to your point, when you start to see that flip, believe me, they'll figure out it's not going to be a 6 cent per gallon cost versus or per mile cost versus 20 cents per mile on, traditional ICE engines. It'll balance out. So the cost effectiveness will not necessarily be there. And the other piece of it is that the environmental impact, if the entire car park around the globe went to 100% EV, okay, they had the good folks over at the UN. I got to hold my nose when I say the UN. I'm sorry. But the good folks over the UN even released a study that said that the reduction in the global temperature would be less than 1/10,000th of a degree Celsius. So, wow. All of these things that people think are running around with their hair on fire, some of us that, are watching what's going on, they're running around screaming about the environment, screaming about the cost. And the truth of the matter is I think it was ExxonMobil did a study recently and said that in 20 years, even if it went to a 50% market share with electric vehicles, they would not be impacted at all in terms of their revenues on the traditional fossil fuel side, because you have to produce the electricity to begin with.
Sure.
We ain't going to do it with wind and solar, not at this point, right?
Exactly.
And I don't think we get to that point where we actually have the car park of electric vehicles being more than 50% without a breakthrough company coming out with a vehicle that's more affordable. I think the average price of an EV right now is somewhere in the high 20s, low 30s, I think, like the Tesla Model 3. So, it made me kind of think of Tata Motors. Tata Motors came out with their Nano in India and sold millions of them. And being able to make that more affordable could lead to that. But then again, you go back to the infrastructure piece.
But and batteries is the key to making it affordable.
Sure.
Because electric motor, there's not a lot of cost in, there's not a lot of engineering in. All those other elements for emissions and whatever else is where the cost is. If we can control the battery costs, maybe with a different product than what we're doing with now, then that's what's going to control the price of the EV vehicle. And then if we control that cost, we really control the ownership costs going forward, because if that battery needs to be replaced, if it's much more affordable, then it's easier to replace the battery than it is to replace the car. But right now, if the battery fails, you might as well replace the car.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And that's the other thing that folks are not aware of. If you do your homework, it's cobalt and lithium are the two key ingredients in terms of manufacturing these batteries. And you talk about geopolitical ramifications. There's a little country around the other side of the globe from us called China. Got to pronounce it properly. That controls, if you go over to I forget which country it is over in Africa, might be Nigeria, Ethiopia. That they have the largest reserves globally, and 15 of the 19 mines are controlled by the Chinese. And so there are some geopolitical ramifications in terms of what it's going to take battery technology wise. And I'm wondering, where we're going to see the next great breakthrough in terms of battery technology come from.
Well, obviously, with all the players getting in there, there's going to be some battery technology that comes through. And because let's look at it, the lead acid battery was the battery that was under the hood of these vehicles for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Until Elon, because Elon originally, before Tesla, went to all the major manufacturers to try to bring his battery technology to them.
Sure.
Nobody would embrace it, so he went and created Tesla.
Yep.
And so there's going to be another breakthrough, but it took that to get us away from lead acid batteries. Mm-hmm. And now we got all these players in there, and it's a home run for somebody to go find something else that can hold a charge. So I think that's coming in the next 10 years.
Yeah, Tesla's technology for the battery is public. He lets anybody copy it if they want to, but will you produce a similar product and et cetera,
Well, if you take a look at, and I'm going to quote J.D. Power. I can't even believe that. I might go open up
J.D. Power
right now. Quoting J.D. Power, another one of our institutions that I've lost a little bit of confidence in. But if you take a look at the J.D. Power initial quality survey, Tesla and Polestar are dead last. They're at the bottom in terms of quality, and I think it's more of a fit and finish. More than anything else, I don't think that they represent the best in terms of fit and finish. And the eye is the buyer, as they say. But the quality is going to have to improve, obviously. But at the end of the day, the battery technology that Ron just referenced, Elon Musk basically opened up the kilt and gave that technology to all the players out there, knowing full well that if they all were able to play catch up with him, the infrastructure piece would come along a lot more quickly, because there would be a bigger market for it and a bigger demand for it.
Well, part of the Tesla stuff with fit and finish, it is some fit and finish, but more of it is the accessibility to service. You can't get service on them. And when you do, there's a period of time that you got to wait for it. So what may be something little becomes that nuisance that you just can't stand by the time you can finally get it fixed. And that's where the rest of us has got to embrace mobile service.
Yeah.
You got to show up to it and fix it. And there's no reason for you not to show up to an electric vehicle and fix it.
Ed, tie that knot for us there right now as it relates to EVs and mobile service. What kind of opportunities do you see in terms of mobile service with EVs moving forward? You've got the Mach-E, you've got the Ford Lightning, F-150 Lightning. Where do you see these opportunities in terms of mobile service?
Well, unless we need to replace a battery or replace an AC system in an electric vehicle, everything else can be done in field. And when we can deliver convenience, that's what customers will buy, is the convenience. Yep. And so we know that EVs is going to limit the frequency of a vehicle coming into the service department. And if we haven't done a good job of retaining them previously, with them needing to come see us twice a year, we're certainly not going to do a good job when we rarely see them. So we have to make it convenient for us to see them and keep our name in front of them. So if we, as this shift grows bigger in the EV, if we're not embracing ways to go find our customers and take care of their needs before they go look for it, when we connect the data, we know what they need before they know they need it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And we're missing the bar. So
how many mobile units you guys up to right now on the road?
I have 5 on the road right now.
And the plans are to grow to what?
11. Wow. I would have, if in normal times I'd already had the 11 because they was ordered almost 2 years ago now. But we'll get them when we get them. Keep putting them out there when it happens.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, and what kind of feedback are you getting from your mobile service clients? Appreciation, obviously, for the level of convenience. What are you doing in terms of any type of a surcharge at this point? Is it still a free service that you provide for them?
It is not a free service anymore, but to them it's free because it's just different pricing. We started with a fee, or we started free, and then we went to a fee for it to come out, a convenience fee. Now we've shifted to different pricing for it. So for mobile service, it's this. We'll come out and do this for you. So we don't even talk about the difference of price. This is what it is.
Sure. Right.
So it's just the price then. And I see Scott's talking about detailing. No, we haven't got into detailing yet. The latest van is certainly charge capable. It's a tire van, so we can come out and replace your tires and charge your vehicle while we're there. And I can provide about a mile of charge per minute that I'm there. So if I'm there for 45 minutes, I can give you a 45-mile range. So it's just a little added benefit that we can do while we're there.
Yeah, and Ed, to Scott's point, do you think that mobile detailing could be a beneficial factor down the road, in terms of profitability?
Anytime we send our customers with their vehicle to somewhere else for them to do some type of service on it, we take the risk of losing that customer. And if we don't find every way that we can to handle end-to-end transactions on that vehicle, then we're missing an opportunity.
I would agree.
That's great.
I would agree. You mentioned a tire truck. What are you doing with respect to brakes on mobile service?
The only brakes that we do right now mobily is on fleet vehicles, because on a fleet vehicle, then we know what we're going to see. And an example that I'll use is the municipality here, a local municipality.
Sure.
We know their vehicles. So we'll replace the rotors that we've already pre-machined. So we'll load those vehicles with stuff that we can go out and do a full brake job on it. From customers in field, not so much yet. I don't have a brake lathe on the truck yet.
I want to fix that for you, buddy. I want to fix that for you. I'm going to connect you with my man Todd Gaba, because he's actually retrofitted an on-car brake lathe. A mobile truck brake lathe, and he's been dying to get in front of you.
We've talked a couple of times, but yes, we can use that reconnection because I have room on my tire van. My other vans, I didn't necessarily have room for. I kind of put a lot of stuff on those things.
Yeah,
my tire van was purposely built for that.
Yeah, he's such a persistent young guy. He's a tremendous entrepreneur in his own right, and he's another guy that figures stuff out. And he's been watching you keenly, because he said, once again, another guy that says every time I listen to Ed Roberts, I learn something. Was one of the things that he said to me. But I'll connect the two of you guys offline for sure, because I think it's an opportunity for both of you, ultimately. So, Ed, we're coming up on the top of the hour, buddy. What's new and exciting? What do you got to look forward to for the balance of the summer outside of business, bourbon, and cigars in September? What do you got going on at the dealership that you want to share with us?
The dealership, we have been blessed, and we continue to grow at leaps and bounds. We're at a small market, but we continue to enhance who we are. And as we talked earlier in this deal with the Great Recession, it's about bringing in the right people that we can grow, that's teachable. We control the cost of those people. We control every aspect of that. We don't have to worry about some other dealer pulling from them because they don't have their phone numbers. They haven't been to those stores. We had to steal them from somebody else for somebody else to re-steal them from them. So it's opportunities for us to continue to enhance that. And we can enhance that. We'll continue to enhance who we are. But one of the things that we're looking at, and I don't know if this is necessarily politically correct for PMAs and all that kind of stuff.
Let it fly. Don't worry about it. Let it fly.
But we're looking at having sales reps that's not even ever present at the dealership, that are people in.
I hope Scott Joseph is listening right now, because I'm talking about this since, the early days of the lockdown, like May and June of 2020. So talk a little bit more about that, Ed.
Well, if you're a real estate rep and you sell somebody a home that just moved into town, why can't you sell them a car? And if we create that connection, so that's what we're working on right now. That's a lot of what we're, so that there's all kinds of ties that brings things into us. And
see, now you've given me a reason to hop on a bird and come down and buy you and Natasha dinner, to pick your brain more on that and to share some thoughts that I have. It's worthy of a bird hop down to St. Augustine.
Well, there's all kinds of things that ties to that. We have people that mess around in rodeos, and what do you do in a rodeo? You have a truck that pulls horses, and what do we sell?
Trucks.
Why can't I have a sales rep there?
Absolutely,
something what he does.
So we talk about, oh my God, this I got goosebumps right now, buddy, because Ron and I have had a lot of conversation about this, where we see the business development side of our business going. And I tell you what, I want you to come back and we'll talk about this again on a full episode, because I think this is a worthy topic to really deep dive and dissect. Sure. So I know Ron's going to be on top of you with another invite on the heels of this. And shit, I don't care, as long as I get a chance to hang and talk with you.
Ditto.
I'm learning something, but we need to talk about this offline and then do a segment on it, because ultimately get the quality of the dinner and writing before you commit. Oh my God, I miss him. I'll tell you, he's nocturnal now because he's got the baby at home. Thank God. And by the way, congrats to Scott and Trish on the birth of their daughter Michaela, and also my buddy Sophia Joseph, Scott's other daughter, and Zach and Gabriella. Congratulations. All good stuff. And everybody's healthy and doing well. Rumor has it that Michaela's first word was "leave me alone," because Scott was bothering her as well. And so that's actually been confirmed by Trish. Just an FYI. But anyhow, buddy, I'll tell you, I'm excited to see you in Louisville. If I can get down to St. Augustine, we need to have a conversation about what you just laid on me, live and in person, because I think it's an opportunity to take some copious notes from you again. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time with us and sharing so generously, as you always do, your insight, expertise, and your knowledge.
Thank you, Ed.
Hey, thanks for having me, and you're welcome anytime.
Well, I want to remind everybody out there, make sure you follow both Ron and myself, as well as Ed, on all the social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, and of course, YouTube. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Click that subscribe button on YouTube as well for more great content coming up. Make sure you visit sandycerami.com for all your recruiting, training, and profitability solutions. And listen, today's interview was produced and distributed by Sandy Cerami & Associates. When you don't know who to call or what to do, that's usually when our phone rings and our inbox dings. We provide the most successful, cost-effective recruiting solutions, leadership, sales, and business development training there is. So check us out at sandycerami.com. I want to thank my man, Ed Roberts, once again. I want to thank my right-hand guy on the right-hand side, the executive producer of today's Automotive Intel Report podcast. In the meantime, we're going to step up to stand out, and we're going to cut it out. We'll see you soon.
See you soon, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, gentlemen.